And good morning. We're live on YouTube and X. We're going to bring in our Falcons Facebook group as well. That's Atlanta Falcons on SI. And I'm going to hit save and get going. So we're streaming to our Meta family as well as our X's and our Googles and everybody out there on this lovely Monday morning in the South. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is our first podcast of June, which typically kicks off the slow season. That's all right. It's never slow around here when we're ready to talk Falcons football, and there's always news going on, and especially with this now the post-1 June dates when some of the things financially can start happening that change the dollars and cents based on how I can allocate money across not just 1 year but 2 years and that type of stuff. But welcome in, everybody. Nick is back, so I want to say hello to Nick. Nick spent some time in the South, spent some time a little all over the place. Nick, welcome back, my friend. It's good to see you.
It's good to be back. Yeah, we was down in Charleston for a week, and that was fun. A lot of good restaurants down that way. Got out on the water too, and man, it poured on us while we were there. We really had hoped to go to one of the beaches down there. Brought all this stuff, flew literally across the country, and streets were flooding. It poured when we were down there, unfortunately. But no, we made the most of it, and we might be moving that way. So we'll see. We'll probably know in the next 2 to 3 weeks where our next destination will be.
Double check your microphone real quick while I'm talking. Just double check. I keep the volume low so I don't always pick it up. Yeah, it's been unseasonably wet around here. I looked it up because it feels like it's been raining since Easter. Well, we got about 8.5 inches of rain in May. We only had 2.5 last May, so it's been a rainy May. It's been soggy, but lots of sunshine this weekend. And just we want to say hello to some folks. We go live every Monday and Wednesday at 8:35, and sometimes we have a surprise show. So if this is your first time watching, make sure you subscribe subscribed so you get those alerts, because if something breaks, we go live. I think our most watched live stream so far this year was the James Pierce trade at about 11 o'clock at night. And yes, we went live to talk about that. But Austin was the first one in here. He says, Austin, if the offense can make the next step forward and the defense can play middle of the road, that should hopefully mean a playoff berth. And I titled the show today, wanted to, talk about ceilings. Sometimes we focus on what's the worst that could happen because, frankly, with the Atlanta Falcons over the 60 years that they've been in existence, the worst does happen. But what's the ceiling for this team? And he says, if the offense can keep going, the next step forward. And I think what the next step forward for me with the offense means would just be more efficient. They were 6th in total yards and I think 12th in scoring. Let's keep the yards up. Let's get the red zone efficiency, because Nick, I looked up the red zone efficiency, and this doesn't even take into account the missed field goals just outside of the red zone, which the Falcons were good at. And I think red zone efficiency, I think the Falcons were 30th or 31st last year. So 6th in yards and 12th in points. That's a big reason why, because once they got down there, they weren't getting into the end zone very much.
Yeah, I saw a graphic on Twitter of Kyle Pitts' best route. He's one of the best in the NFL at it, but it's the corner route, which is one of the least efficient red zone routes in the NFL, which not great for your tight end. I mean, it's good that he's the best there, but you're hoping for a little more. So, yeah, the red zone stuff's got to be a lot better. Down the stretch, they were one of the best run game efficiencies wise. So it really needs to come a lot from the pass game as well. It was a little bit erratic, I guess, coming with some of Michael Penix's accuracy, but that's to be expected with what he was coming out of college, as well as being thrust into the fire for the first time. But yeah. I mean, this is the bottom line stuff here. I mean, Austin's right. The last bit that I always have to add is stay healthy, right? It's not always who's the best team. It's who has to battle the least attrition come the end of the season. And that can make or break a season.
Yeah, and I like the Falcons' depth on this team for the most part. I mean, the offensive line can be a little scary. There's depth at the defensive line, even if your personnel is a little similar, I guess is a way I want to put it. I'd like to get a little heavier up front, but you can make up for that with bodies. If you've got mobility up front, I could throw 5 across the line of scrimmage if it's rundowns type. And I got some pretty good guys on the back end now and some speed at linebacker to make up for that. It's a much more balanced team for sure. Want to say hello to Edward. Edward's breaking the ice for us with the super chat. Matches my shirt today, actually. I think Edward. That was very, very good of you to do. Appreciate the support, especially during the dog days in June when the numbers come down a little bit as far as total viewers because people are doing their own thing in the summer. That this helps keep the lights on in the summertime, keep this big forehead nice and shiny. So thank you, Edward. He says, good morning, Falcons family. Right back at you, my friend. Again, appreciate the support. Evan has a good question, and it's a thoughtful question. He says, good morning, Falcons fam. He says, what's up with all the hate on Kirk, y'all? Only thing I could blame Kirk for would be, the losing of the pick, which they may have lost anyway, the 5th round draft pick. Other than that, I think this is all in the front office and coach. Evan, it's just typical psychology of fandom. No, anything you think of that Kirk has done, over the last 14 months, what would you say he should have done differently? He should have been more open about his injury with the coaching staff. All right, well, players don't do that. Player disguises injuries for fear of losing playing time. News at 11. That's not news.
No.
That happens. It's up to the player. They will hide it and play as long as they can until the coach says, you're out of here. That Kirk was still playing through an injury is on the coaching staff. That's not on the player. Younghoe Koo was doing the same thing. That's what players do. They're expected to by their teammates, especially in a game like football, Nick.
Especially your quarterback. I mean, remember what happened last year with Anthony Richardson, where he tapped himself out for a play?
Yep.
Locker room pretty much had mutiny on him. There's definitely a Spartan mentality with football where, carry it out. If you're coming home, either come back, healthy or come back on your shield kind of thing, where you have to go out like that. So I don't think I would blame Kirk for anything, how it happened. And it is on the coaching staff to understand and put him and the team in the best situation. And they failed to do that, obviously, last season and in multiple facets, but with Kirk as well. And it's hard. I mean, obviously, in hindsight, it's easy to say he had the tremendous output as well. You're not maybe quite ready to throw Penix out there, and you made that huge investment in Cousins, and you're in a weird situation now because of it. So I get that it is difficult, but you're in those positions to make the difficult decisions and look right in hindsight, and right now they don't.
If you're from the outside looking in, you say this relationship has gone bad. Whose fault is it? Not that it matters, because it's one of the things I learned in high school and college. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. If you're not getting along, break up. This is more on the Falcons. I mean, it is. You sign this guy, he comes out and has a shiny press conference. What the things we can do when we're all on the same page is pretty special. And then they have to call him and tell him, hey, we're drafting a quarterback anyway, by the way. What? It's been downhill from that, and you don't blame Kirk for that. However, let me get to the crux of Evan's conversation. Here's a question here. Kirk is a detriment to the Atlanta Falcons. He is a detriment to the Atlanta Falcons right now in multiple ways. Through his contract, through the fact that he's going to be a distraction, has been a distraction, is a distraction, will leak stuff to the press about stuff that's been going on. He is a detriment to the Atlanta Falcons right now. And Matt Ryan was seeing some of this at the end of his career, and Matt had 10 years of love leading up to that spot, but his contract was becoming an albatross. Kirk Cousins is hurting your team. I don't like him now. That's why. He is a detriment to this team. I wish he would go away. I want him to be gone. That's the feeling. That's the emotional part of fandom, and it's perfectly understandable. I don't blame Kirk Cousins for where the situation he is in right now, and I want his ass out of Atlanta. I'm tired of it. I don't blame him for it, but I don't want him here anymore. I want him gone. And I'm one of the more rational people when it comes to this situation, Nick. So that's why all the hate, Evan, is perfectly understandable. He is hurting your team. We don't like that. We don't like that as fans. He's the bad guy now. He's the bad guy because I've said this a zillion times. Fans are fans. We're the only permanent thing about the Atlanta Falcons. The owners are the next closest, but I've been through two owners, Rankin Smith and Arthur Blank, and I'll be through a third here before too long. The only permanent thing about the Atlanta Falcons is you. For everybody else, this is a job. Kirk Cousins will come and go. You will still be here. You are loyal to the Atlanta Falcons. These guys are not. And when they start hurting my team, I want them gone.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And it's also, again, takes a team effort as well. Most will be the quarterback, and it's easier to pilot all on the quarterback because it's just one person, right? I remember talking about this in the Bronco era on the other end. You put so much on the quarterback because changing one person, if they're the answer, it changes everything. Same with Penix right now. But the defense
feels like that, Nick, because you hear that about
Yeah.
ownership. Oh, if we have a new owner, everything would be great. No, it wouldn't. There's multiple layers. It's so much easier to say this is all on Jimmy Lake. No, it's not. Replacing Jimmy Lake will help, but there's more to it than just one thing, Nick, like you're saying.
Yeah, I always say that there's the 4 pillars of successful NFL franchises. Obviously, it's head coach, quarterback, general manager, and ownership. And if you can be good in those areas, you got a chance to have a pretty good sustained team. But some matter more than others. It's really, you can go across to the Kansas City Chiefs, who constantly have one of the worst rated owners in football, and but they have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So things can, if you're great in some areas, that can outweigh shortcomings in other spots, but you can't really do that at quarterback and head coach.
And look it up. Arthur Blank bought the team in 2002. So if you're under 30, he's all you've known. And is he the best owner in the world? No. Have they won a Super Bowl in the 25 years he's been in charge? No. Well, then we should be doing better. The other part of that is remember the 20 years before that, I started watching really in 1980, and the Smiths were a disaster. They were leeches on the NFL, where they were happy to use the Falcons as a revenue source for their family. And Arthur Blank is not perfect, but God, he's 10 times better than the Smiths. It's like, I know how bad it can be. And the Smiths were just awful. They were just awful for this team, this franchise, this city. They're one of the reasons why the Atlanta Falcons aren't a bigger thing. We watch college football here because we couldn't watch the Falcons. They weren't worth watching. Austin, good morning as well. Good morning to see you. Rusty's a little bit on the cynical side, understandable. So I think we have a lot of talent, especially on offense, and the Falcons do. They've put a lot into their offense the last 5 years that they should have. Even go back another year, and you've got 2 first-round draft picks, from Lindstrom and McGarry from that draft class. There's a lot invested on the offense, but we will be held back by Raheem Morris being a bad head coach. I honestly think we missed the playoffs again, and Terry and Raheem are gone next year's personal opinion. Yep. And you're entitled to it. It is a possibility. I'm more interested right now in, what goes right. What if the Atlanta Falcons, if Penix plays similarly to what he did last year, but starts getting more efficient, the touchdown numbers start coming up. You're not just moving the ball inside the 20s. A lot of it had to do with your kicking game too. And he'd never thrown to the number 1 offense until the week that he was starting. That's going to help as well. But the yardage numbers and points actually went up in his 3 starts for a team that had the 6th best total yards in the NFL last year. They actually went up in his starts. If they can maintain that, they will get better on defense, Nick. There's no doubt in my mind this defense gets better. How much gets better, we'll see. We'll see. But they can't be any worse than they were last season as far as the ability to win a football game. Now, you can give up more points and you can give up more yards, but that defense gave them no chance to win games down the stretch because they couldn't get anybody off the field. Long, painful drives with scores, no turnovers. It was poor. It was bottom 3.
It was bottom 3. Looking at weighted DVOA, they finished 30th last season, only ahead of the former Falcons defensive coordinators unit, the Jacksonville Jags, and the historically bad Carolina Panthers last year. So in theory, you can go lower, but the odds of that I feel like are low just with competency. Lake was obviously in over his head, and you've through resources added this summer. Now, what's the ceiling? We talk about that's the title of the show, but what's the ceiling of that offense? I think you're still missing some. We don't know if we have aces along the defensive line. We don't know about the mass on the defensive line. I saw a comment in here like, can we stop the run? We're going to find out, but that's going to be a tough one this season. Maybe you adopt a more aggressive early down defense where you're sending bodies at the problem. Makes you a little bit more vulnerable on the back end for some explosive plays, but you got to figure out something to stop and create some chaos, and maybe that'll lead to more sacks and run stops. But how good is Terrell this season, because cornerbacks can fluctuate year to year. That's a big one for that. So we'll see. We'll see. Chris Walker, good morning, Scott, along with everyone watching. Welcome back, Nick. Yeah, it's good to be back. Missed you guys. I did not take my computer. I think that's one reason things were a little bit slow this morning as well. It's saying, waking up from a slumber there. Atlanta boy, Drake and Kyle should be red zone monsters. Jump ball's a must. Yeah, you just don't see it as much from Pitts. I don't know what it is. He's big, but he's not always like overwhelmingly physical. Like Draymond Green rebounding box out. I don't always see that from Pitts. Drake has that though.
Yeah, the contested catches, Kyle should be better than he has been. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, you think about it in the red zone, and if I've got even in a double tight end set, and I'm not even talking about Kyle Pitts, or forget the set. What I'm thinking though is the diversity of the skill that's out there, and I've got Drake London out wide, I've got Kyle Pitts out wide in the red zone, I've got Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod inside. The quickness in there. And then I've got either Bijan or Tyler running the ball behind a pretty good offensive line. There's some mismatch opportunities all over the place for this team. Oh, and by the way, I think I'll say 4-5 just to be safe, but I think Michael Penix went like 4-4-7, so if he gets a lane, he's not a scrambler, so to speak, but if he gets a lane and an opening, poof, he can take off and pick up 10 yards in a hurry. Straight ahead. We don't want him Michael Vicking back there, ducking and dodging and trying to make guys miss. That's not his game. But in a straight line, because they're in man coverage and you run 4 verticals and there's an opening, Michael Penix can pick up 10 to 15 yards like that in a hurry in a straight line. So the diversity of this offense and the skill that is out there doesn't necessarily depend on Kyle Pitts being that guy, because Drake London is that guy too. But they're out there. The Twin Towers are there. And it should help with red zone efficiency as well.
Yeah, and for me, red zone offense is as much on the play caller as it is on the personnel. Just having watched good offensive play callers, you get those gimme touchdowns where they have in their pocket. It's like, hey, we've been working how many times in practice, Scott, are they working on red zone to get those plays where it's the free touchdowns, because it's so hard to score down there. So we'll see what Zach Robinson does year 2, but maybe we should look at him as well. I mean, with all the other coaching malpractice and the Kirk Cousins stuff, and it's hard to get, too focused in on something like that that's downstream. But that, I think that is a offensive designer and play caller statistic as much as it is a player statistic.
So there's a discussion here, Nighthawk Runner and AJ talking about, what people have said in Flowery Branch about Jeff Ulbrich and Raheem Morris talking about, how things have evolved into this being a passing league. It's a passing league, and how much of your effort is put into stopping the run and how that has changed. Now, again, online conversations, they tend to go binary, and there's gray area in there for both of y'all. No, they're not going to give up on stopping the run. They're probably not going to focus on it as much as they have in the past. And I've said, yes, I'd like to see another 320 plus pound guy. He doesn't have to be big and fat. That was one of the descriptions here. You don't have to have a big and fat 320 pound guy. There's strong guys out there. If you want a zero tech, head up over the center, being able to occupy a double team from the center and the guard. Those guys aren't really out there right now. They're slashers, which is fine. And, to AJ's point, who's talking about it, is, they said they're going to stop the run by, through penetration with the quick guys, which I think can happen if you have enough guys out there. You can't do that with 3 guys on the front. There's too much space. So I've talked about how the Falcons going to stop a run. You can do it with a 4-man front, 5-man front, and I can line up 275, 300, 280 across my 4. And now I've got speed on the backside of it too. And Divine Diablo, Caden Ellis, if Troy Anderson comes back, great. Couple physical safeties. Get a little bit bigger with Billy Bowman, a former safety, in the nickel over D. Alford, if that's how it works out. Now I've got size on average, bigger guys out there by adding one more guy. And I've got speed behind them instead of watching J.D. Bertrand and Nate Landman trying to chase guys down in acres of space, or Justin Simmons, bless his heart, coming up and not having anybody around him but a ball carrier for 10 yards and wondering why he's missing so many tackles. How come because defense isn't made to be played in space.
Mm-mm.
I want to create space on offense. And hell, Jimmy Lake was just giving it to him. Huge wide splits up front and 10 guys 10 to 15 yards off the line of scrimmage. You'd see the box shot, the TV shot, and you count 4 guys in the area. You turn on Minnesota, you could count all 11. So things are going to be different. The personnel is different, and the scheme's going to be hella different. But yeah, you still want to stop the run, but it is a passing league for sure.
I will be curious to see how Jeff Ulbrich utilizes the defense, because to me, looking at the personnel, I think this is much more a defense that needs to be 5 guys along the line of scrimmage, maybe one of the edges dropping and a linebacker coming over a B or A gap as well. And I think the defenses I would be mimicking as much as I possibly could would be schematically the Vikings and the Broncos, where you have a lot of either only 3 guys rushing and 8 guys in coverage, or you're sending 8 guys and you have all these different versatile Jalen Walker, Caden Ellis, all these different versatile pieces along the defense. But that hasn't necessarily been Ulbrich's style. And granted, he's been very tied to Robert Salah with the Jets and the 49ers as well. But he's been much more, we're sending 4, we're winning them on the line of scrimmage, and we're going to have 7 in coverage to prevent the big play. And that's worked when you've had the talent that the 49ers had along the across the defensive line during those years. He had Quinnen Williams and a lot like first-round pick after first-round pick on the Jets as well along the front. That's not really how the Falcons are built. So I'll be curious to see if Ulbrich breaks trend with that and becomes more blitz-oriented on early down, as is becoming a little bit more of a trend to some of the top defenses in the league, but hasn't been historically his MO as a play caller.
Chris has a good question. I have a couple good questions in here. Talking about, ceilings in here. Kyle Pitts is a popular topic these days for one reason or another. I think everybody can agree that he hasn't lived up to his billing, and then people are split as to why. It was the quarterback, and what I boil down to is anybody that says, well, the quarterback situation has been bad, that, this. I'm like, that's why you shouldn't have drafted him to begin with. You didn't have a quarterback when you drafted him, you morons. So I've been saying that for 5 years now. Matt Ryan was uber expensive and a declining 36-year-old quarterback with a bad offensive line who got a lot better, by the way. Credit to them. Dwayne Ledford and Arthur Smith shaped that offensive line up pretty quickly. And a Swiss cheese defense, and you're taking a pass catcher? Come on, man. So it was always a bad fit. That was always a bad fit on that. But question here, and I think it was AJ says, where did you have this in here? AJ's been on fire today. If Pitts gets 800 yards and 6 touchdowns, is he given a new deal or sent packing? If he's allowed to hit free agency, and this is one of the things, this isn't just you, AJ. People make it sound like, well, I'd just give him a team. Leonard Floyd's out there. Well, they signed Leonard Floyd. Who was it last year? Matthew Judon's out there. I just give him a team-friendly deal and make him prove it. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want it. So is Pitts offered? I mean, if you say that, is he offered a new contract at 800 yards and 6 touchdowns? Probably. But I don't think that's good enough for him to get a franchise tag, where it would be in the neighborhood of $15 or $16 million now on a 1-year guaranteed deal. I can get 800, 600 with a draft pick, over the course of 4 or 5 years, that I don't need to be going for a second contract, high dollar contract on that. I think you're offering him a new deal, but it's probably for a pay cut at 800, 600, and he might not take it. He might want to go somewhere else. So that's a great question. And a lot of it depends on how the team does. If it's 800 yards with 6 touchdowns and they go 12-5 into an NFC championship, he's probably pretty happy to be part of that offense.
I think he's tagged with those numbers.
You think so?
I think that's a tag number, because the tight end tag is not high. You give yourself 1 more year negotiating window. With that, then, since you have the control of him, you can approach him with that team-friendly money, that team-friendly and air quotes on that one, where you have more guarantees up front, and maybe he'd want to take that and run, or maybe he'd want to bet on himself and give himself another year. But I think given the advantage you have with the positional allocation of the franchise tag and him being a tight end, I don't know if that would go to quarter or something. Those wouldn't be wide receiver numbers, but tight end numbers, those are fine. And I think the tag would make the most sense for that, and betting one more
I
year
want to see.
on him.
Like I said, Nick, for me, it depends on what's his place in this offense and his success. If they're 8-9 again, and those are good numbers, not great numbers, and he's, is he catching big passes? Is he a weapon when it matters? Is he catching a lot of third downs? For a team that's winning, then yeah, I become real interested. But again, for 1 year, $15 million, I don't know if that's where I want to spend $15 million on an 800, 600 tight end. But
I mean,
806 tight end. Apologies.
Yeah, but the numbers. I mean, just what was it? 800 yards.
800 yards, 6 touchdowns.
800 yards makes him the second most receiving yards of any tight end in the NFL last season, and 6 touchdowns makes him the 4th highest touchdown total.
So top 5. Yeah,
in both of them, top 2 and top 4.
But yeah, I would think that's why I said it's a good question. That's why I said, AJ, that's a good question, because that's a good number. I would want to see it in greater context with the offense. Is he a 4th option? Because do I want to tag a guy who's 4th in yards now behind Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Bijan Robinson? Or would I rather spend half that and bring back Tyler Algier? Tyler Algier could get $6 to $7 million maybe, or do I want to invest that? Again, resource allocation. For me, it's not just the numbers, but that was a great question, AJ, because that 800 yards and 6 touchdowns is such a good line where you're just really, you have to look more into it. If he's 1,210, yeah, I'm tagging his ass. I'm not necessarily offering him a new contract. I am tagging him. I want to see him do it 2 years in a row before I give that dude $75 million.
Yeah, I get it. If
he doesn't like it, now I can trade him. If I got him tagged, he just came off a year like that. Now I'm soliciting for trades beyond a day two pick. I want a first rounder for him.
Yeah, it's very possible. I was using Sumer Sports, I think, for that data there. So maybe it was off because Brock Bowers wasn't populating. But that's still a pretty darn good year overall. So yeah, I think Sumer Sports maybe took a nosedive on that one. So it was 800 yards. That puts him 7th in yards, and then 6 touchdowns puts him 9th. So there we go. The numbers weren't correct. I apologize. That's not a top 5 here. That's top 10.
High. It seemed a little high, but still, again, I think those numbers are in the conversation. And again, for 1 year, and Brian Friedman over on Facebook, he says, "No way am I tagging Pitts." So for me, in that case, you're just saying no matter what he does, no way you're bringing him back, because if he hits free agency, he's going to have a lot of offers out there. And again, he doesn't have to take the Falcons one. I like if he has a good year, I'm tagging him. I'm absolutely tagging him because I want to see it 2 years in a row. You play at a high level, true professional, out there busting your ass, improving, working. Again, he's still only 24 years old, for God's sakes. He's younger than Michael Penix.
Mm-hmm.
Maturing. I guess that's probably the best word. If I see you maturing into the guy I thought you could be over 2 years in a row, yeah, I'm sold then. I'm okay then. But I want to see it 2 years. And I'm not stuck. If I tag him, it's just a 1 year deal. It's fully guaranteed. But every penny he's been paid to this point, which is $30 million, has been fully guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where I would go with those numbers, just because he's still young. I know he's a coach killer. We use that word with that a lot, but he is talent. I mean, there's just not a lot of good difference-making tight ends. So if you have one or potentially have one, I would be skeptical just to let it walk for nothing.
Where did it come in here earlier? Was it Tony? Tony, good to see you. Tony says, good morning, Scott. Nick, do you think there's any of the trade rumors will happen? Ramsey or Hendrickson or Pitts or Cousins? Let's put those in there. Tony, I don't think the Falcons have the resources to pull off a trade like this. Mm-hmm. And it's strange to me when I looked it up. Someone asked me this question about Ramsey. You know what his dead cap number is if he's moved?
No idea.
$50 million. His base this year is 1.25. Because I think someone on YouTube, shout out, I forgot the name off the top of my head while I'm doing this. in the comment section said, would you trade Ramsey for Pitts straight up? I said, I probably would, because he's $1.25 million is his base salary. The Dolphins have to eat the rest of it. It's all in roster bonuses, re-signings, and signing bonuses, and in dead money. They take on a $50 million dead cap hit. They can spread it across multiple years, but that's Kirk Cousins money we're talking about for Ramsey, a 30-year-old cornerback. But I would basically get $10 million in salary cap and Jalen Ramsey for Kyle Pitts. Would you do that deal? Probably. Well, what about the rest of that contract? It's not my problem. He's got 3 years left on his deal. That's not my problem. That's the Dolphins' problem. And if they're willing to part with him, they're going to eat the $50 million. I would do a new deal, or I'd give him a 1 year, it's basically a 1 year deal for $1.25 million. Not even that. You're paying me $10 million, and I'm giving you Kyle Pitts for Jalen Ramsey for a 1 year deal. Kyle Pitts is only on a 1 year deal. Mm-hmm. So, yes, I would. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't. Unless you send Pitts to them first. Pitts to the Dolphins straight up.
I think your move for any veteran of that caliber, that ship probably sailed when you traded up for Pierce Jr. Because right now you're pulling away from your most valuable draft pick in your top 100 2026 draft cachet. So that was you betting on Pierce instead. If you kept that first round pick, maybe you're talking about trading your 2026 2 for Hendrickson. But now
you're already without a 1 and a 5.
Yep.
So, you could go, we came from the Rams, F them picks, right? And just, we won't have a draft in 2026. I mean, if you're full of young players and you've got a bunch of money for free agency, okay, so be it. But that's not exactly how I want to go into 2026 with no draft picks. But it probably costs you your second. Now you're sitting there with a third, a fourth, a sixth, and a seventh going into the 2026. You better win, I tell you that.
I just worry that feels short-sighted to me. This is a team that they didn't invest anything on the offense this year, and you are due for some revitalization along the offensive line. Yep. And the defensive line is still a question.
Long in the tooth.
Yeah, so I would worry about giving up those premium assets because really good players along the defensive and offensive line, specifically at the outside portion, don't hit free agency. Really, I mean, you get a Kyle McGarry caliber guard or center, they're hitting free agency. Tackle? Hell no. We don't want to live in that world. We don't know what that looks like. So I think you need to keep those picks if possible. Now, with that said, let's say I don't even know when the trade deadline is now, Scott. Let's say you're 6 and 2.
It's a little bit later. It's like the 10th of November this year. I think it's like the second Tuesday or the second week of November this year. Normally it's you just think Halloween, it's easy to think just Halloween. So it's early in November is the trade deadline.
Let's say you only have 2 losses at that point, and it's going to cost you a second round pick this year or a third round pick this year and a fourth in 2027. You get back like a 7th in 2027. Sure. Yeah. At that point, the parameters have changed. You're in a pretty weak division. NFC should be up for grabs still to some extent, other than the Eagles. But I think that's when maybe if those guys are still out there, you can talk about it. From what I've gathered, just following the NFL at large, Scott, it does seem like Ramsey back to the Rams is going to happen if anything happens. So I wouldn't waste too much time talking about him to the Falcons. I just don't think that makes sense. But Hendrickson's the interesting one because he is talented. Man, it just feels like you have too many questions right now to be in and without resources to be making a move like that.
Make you fumble going back to Pitts. And I don't think Hendrickson and Ramsey, I don't see that happening. The Falcons just don't have the resources for that trade. Does Cousins eventually get traded? I would still bet on no. If they're hell bent on keeping him as a backup, then they just cut him next year and they can do it as a post June 1 and spread, I think, $25 million next year and $10 million in 2027, which is peanuts kind of. We expected that when he was signed. Okay, he'll play for 2 years. This is a 2-year deal, and then you'll take on a dead cap hit, and you'll have your quarterback replacement by then, which didn't expect it to be Michael Penix at the time. But Make You Fumble says, I would not pay Pitts. He's Julio Jones 2.0. Brother, I'd take Julio Jones 2.0 when Julio started being a problem was Julio Jones 4.0 and 5.0 in his like fourth and fifth contracts, and you're paying him as he was used like a running back, y'all. I mean, it's like, why isn't Julio Jones in the game in the red zone? Because he has 6 catches for 70 yards on this drive on 5 screens where he's been hit 22 times. And he's beat up and gassed when they got into the red zone. Julio Jones was used like a running back, and his decline was kind of running back-esque. If you look at his numbers, it fell off steeply. There was not a steady decline of Julio Jones. So right now, I'd be happy with 25 to 28-year-old Julio Jones if that was Kyle Pitts, and that'd be his next contract. His next contract would be 1 year if you tag him, and then it'd be 2 to 3 years of guaranteed money. That's what you're hoping for when you draft him. You when you draft him, you want to pay him. You want to give him a second contract. Is he going to get anything the neighborhood of the trajectory that Drake London is on? Nope. No way. Drake London's going to be a $30+ million guy in 12 months, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what the limit is there? We'll see. But the wide receiver market is insane, so he's going to get paid ridiculous money. But the question at hand here, Scott, how good can the Falcons be in 2025? I've said it 100 times. This team has a lot of questions still on defense. You didn't add anything to the offense, so it's got to come from internal growth. Can Michael Penix be a franchise quarterback out of the gate? I'm not necessarily saying he has to be sophomore season Patrick Mahomes, but if he comes out and with authority looks like a top 10 quarterback where the offense runs through him and he's making S-tier plays and throwing that, ball on the outside that you could hang clothes on, it's on such a rope, then you have a chance to be a 12-win team this season. Yeah. I do worry about the depth of the offensive line at all. I think that's a unit that you're one injury away from potential disaster. And that's true for many teams, of course, but that just worries me with the lack of investment. It's going to come down to the coaching. And just because we haven't seen a lot of those guys, it's just hard to project. So the unknown, I assume, maybe not the worst, but lower outcome for some of those backups to the offensive line. And then it's a defense. You mentioned the coaching. That's got to raise the floor there. I still think they lack mass up front, and that could be a problem against some teams, especially with where offenses are going in the league right now, getting bigger. They're running the football more. I think last year was the first year in 15 years where rushing was as efficient as passing in the league. So those are the areas that concern me a lot. But I think the ceiling, I think you're talking about 12-5 and that should win the NFC South.
That'll win the NFC South. It would have won it in the last 5 years. And I don't see Tampa Bay, especially because if you're 12-5, you're probably beating Tampa Bay twice again. Mm-hmm. And no offense to the Panthers, I don't think the Panthers are a 12-5 team yet. They're trending in the right direction, but I don't think they are there yet. I agree with you. There's so many things that have to go right. But the good thing is there's like, it's not completely out of the question that they can. Okay, your pass rush should get better. Well, yeah, you replaced Lorenzo Carter with Leonard Floyd, Matthew Judon with Leonard Floyd. Ebiketti's been a useful piece, and now I've got 2 first-round edge rushers that can combine, get 10 to 12 sacks possibly. I've gotten more athletic on the defensive line, a little stronger with Morgan Fox. Rook Orohoro was a second and third round pick. He's basically the equivalent of a first round pick. He was 35th overall, and you spent first round resources to get him. He's going to be there full time. Onyemata, I'm surprised is still there, but you need the experience now. Now I'll be surprised if he's gone. When Grady was gone, you needed his experience up front. And he was really, really good his first year. And then, like most Atlanta Falcons defenders in 2024, he wasn't good. He should have a bounce back year. There's speed in the linebacker group. I'm still a little worried about corner, but there's bodies there now. At least there's competition there now. Nickel should be a lot better. Even if D. Alford wins the job back, he'll win it back by beating out a lot of players, including Clark Phillips, including possibly Kobe Bryant. I think Kobe will probably play outside, including Billy Bowman. There's competition there, and let the cream rise to the top, and just instead of anointing guys as starters, which what happened last year, and it was bad. It was all bad on that side of the ball. That there's competition there. So how good can Michael Penix be, and what level of jump does this defense make? Michael Penix looks pretty damn good. He's got weapons. And then on the defensive side of the ball, there's the potential there to have a quantum leap from god awful to even average above average. And it's a 12-win team. It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see some teams how just going from incompetency on the defensive coaching staff to competency, and just being in the right spot, getting guys in position to succeed. And that could really turn things around, obviously, with Ulbrich, an adult in the room. Not that Lake's not an adult, but he was over his head. I mean, just you saw him get to that level, and it was too much for him. So kind of like how quickly that happened at the University of Washington here as well. But good point from Harry Marshall as well. But first, JB says, I don't think any team can lose legit starters and not miss a beat. Sometimes you can. You don't know about the depth, and some guys can step up when they get the opportunity and run with it. Also, there's levels to this. It's not binary. You could have, you're missing a beat, or you're missing the entire song with the backup offensive line, especially that comes in. So yeah, it's not binary necessarily. You got to be able to tread water, and sometimes they sink like an anchor.
I think, and JB, I think this is a good point, what you're saying. I don't think any team can lose legit starters and not miss a beat. I think so. I agree with you. I think it's a good point. However, I don't think this applies to the Atlanta Falcons. Why is that? They're not missing it. They didn't lose any starters on offense. Okay. Except unless you call Kirk Cousins. Michael Penix was a starter at the end of the season. Ryan Newsel started half the games last year. Everybody else is back. Those are the only Scots. The offense is back. On the defensive side of the ball, I've said it before, I'll say it again. And this is before the investment. This is before free agency. This is before the draft. The Atlanta Falcons can be less talented man for man. Justin Simmons is a good player. Grady Jarrett's a good player. Those are two of the pretty good resumes. They're a little bit older, but they didn't play well last year. The defense did not play well last year. The only players who played at a decent level, A.J. Terrell, Caden Ellis, and Jesse Bates. Everybody else was not as good as they were in 2023. They all took a step back. I didn't get great play from those guys. I can get better play, even if Rook isn't necessarily a better player than Grady next year, as far as talent goes. He'll play better for the Atlanta Falcons in 2024 to 2025 than Grady did in 2023. Justin Simmons was not good for the Atlanta Falcons. He's a good player. Matthew Judon was not good for the Atlanta Falcons. He'll play better this year. You can upgrade the play at that position, even if you didn't upgrade the player. And we'll have the argument, we can absolutely make the argument that you still did upgrade the player. That there were upgrades in the player. Rook could be a better player this year than a 32-year-old Grady Jarrett. Xavier Watts could be better than a 32-year-old Justin Simmons. Those are arguments. The argument I would stick with, though, you can get better on defense for sure, because the bar was set so damn low last year. This defense will be better. It will be.
And you have some premium investments on the defensive line, which get the right coaching staff in there, things click. They could really take off. Now, I said this a lot with the Broncos last season. Scott, if you remember, you have all these questions on the defense, and not every single one's going to hit. But again, it's not binary yes or no. It's kind of a spectrum, and they're a Yahtzee roll, right? Like, how many Yahtzees can you hit with those rolls? And it's not just Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. It's also Ruka Rohoro. So those guys that you've really set up to succeed, it's sink or swim time. And it's really not ideal always to have the rookies to be so dependent on them, but it's the NFL. Sometimes it's like that. So those guys are all premium investments. They all have talent to be difference makers. Just what level do they find themselves at this season? You could hit on every single one of them, and that completely changes the perspective of the defense. You can miss on all of them, and you are arguably where you were last season. So we'll find out.
And Harry says we effectively lost Grady and Simmons, but got Floyd, Walker, and Pierce. And the thing is about this is I would add in Xavier Watts, and I would absolutely add into this conversation Ruka Rovero. That's who you're adding. The class of 2024 was redshirted. They were not expected to play. We came on here and said it the week after the draft. If you take win now out of the equation, this draft makes sense. I'm building for the future to replace my 30-year-old starters, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, and Kirk Cousins. That was who you drafted last year to replace those guys. Well, they're going to be counted on this year. This draft class, I need to play. I need to play right away. Yeah. How hard is it going to be to get an improvement on Matthew Judon from last year? If the Falcons don't get at least Matthew Judon play from Jalen Walker and or James Pierce, I will be shocked. And Leonard Floyd will play better than him anyway. And that's not a slight on Matthew Judon. They were not put into position to succeed. I put that on the coaching staff, and the coaching staff has been changed. So, and again, someone else to look at too as part of the rotation is Brandon Dorlus. You know, do I expect him to come in and be a starter and beat out David Onyemata? No, I don't. Can he be an effective piece across an 8-man rotation on the defensive line? Sure. Sure he can. And I'm a big fan of Taquan Graham. I think he's one of the more underrated Falcons out there. That Taquan Graham is a good part of this. We haven't even mentioned Zach Harrison. Zach Harrison was mothballed last year when they went to a 2-man defensive line. Yes, it was a 2-man defensive line with 2 stand-up edge rushers spread out into the slots. That Zach Harrison was lost. He was a lost child last year too. He's a talented front 4 type of guy. So that's what I think. I expect the ceiling. How good can this team be? I think the offense can be big plays, and I also think they've got the diversity to go out and grind out, you know, the effort, let's run the ball mentality. But they've got big play potential out there. They've got some explosive weapons in Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney. And then the down the field contested catchability of Drake London. And whatever you get from Kyle Pitts, we'll see. Defensive side of the ball, I think they're just going to be just a hell of a lot more fun to watch, Nick. They might give up more big plays. They might. Their scoring might not be that much different. That's okay. We'll probably get 4 extra possessions per game, which gives the offense more touches than watching 14-play, 9-minute drives that end in a touchdown or a field goal. That's what we watched last year, and it was painful. It's going to be a lot more fun.
Yeah. And last season, for a while there, you know, the stats with the not giving up explosive plays, but at what cost, right? They were not creating negative plays, and teams were just able to really just dial in on them and get into rhythm. There was not a lot of disruption from that Falcons defense. So you added some disruptors this season. Can you do enough to stop the runs on the early down and get to those desert downs? We'll find out. I mean, a lot of questions, but I do think that the ceiling is still high. The schedule is not as easy as we've had it in some previous seasons. I do think that, I mean, the Buccaneers roster is very talented. They're going for a 3rd offensive coordinator 3 years in a row. But can Baker Mayfield keep this level with all of that? They got an incredible offensive line, though, and that's the floor raiser on that side of the ball. So, and we're discounting the Saints this year, obviously.
Yeah, I think the Saints are more, and again, this might be a Falcons show, which implies bias, and I recognize that and try and compensate for it. I don't expect the Saints to be competitive this year. Yeah. You know, and I think that, you know, tanking is bad. Well, I think they're in line to want to go get a quarterback to get the number 1 pick. I think they've got a much better chance at the number 1 overall pick. And I think organizational wise, especially after the bailout they just got from Derek Carr, my God, how lucky can you get? What kind of voodoo do they have down there? He just gave them back like $40 million in salary cap. Good for them. Yeah. But the Saints aren't a factor this year. Moving forward, yes, they've reset their credit limit, and they're going to come out of next year with a quarterback.
Yeah, man, maybe Tyler Shuck ends up being a hit. We'll see. But John Harrell says, I believe it all rests on the defense. I still think most of it rests on Penix being the guy, but because it's just one player, right, that can have the biggest influence. But defense is huge as well. They were bottom 3, bottom 5 last season. And to begin of the chat, can they finish 12th this season? That would be a monumental step up. And it's easier to go from horrific to good, solid, than it is to even go from like good to great. So that's definitely within the realm of possibility for the team. But again, what does Penix look like? Is he the guy? I mean, I think it's one of those things. I don't know what Supreme Court ruling it was, Scott, but the one for defining pornography, it's like, I don't know how to define it, but you know it when you see it.
You'll know it when you see it.
I think we're there at the quarterback as well.
So, and that's for me, John, and I'm gonna take both, because Nick basically just kind of said what Stephen B just said, which is, wait, it all rests on the defense with an offense loaded with first-round picks. Well, because of this, I'm with John. For me, the offense is more of a steady. If we're doing an equation and we're setting it up, I kind of know what I have in the offense. I think the offense is good enough that the floor for this team should be 8 wins. Like, that's kind of what happened last year, right? The offense was good enough that the defense was terrible and they won 8 games. So I think the floor is 8 wins because the offense is good enough. It's a constant. I know what I'm getting because it's an offense loaded with first-round picks. The defense is the X factor. Where's my variable in here? Michael Penix is there. I'm trying to think of him as not as much of a variable, and maybe that's short-sighted and naive on my part. It is. That's okay. The defense is the variable here. Going from 8 wins to 12 to 13 wins is on the defense, as far as I'm concerned. So I agree with John on that one. But as you see, Stephen, Nick said the same thing you did. And so it's a valid discussion without a doubt on that one. Yeah. I thought I saw one more thing in here I wanted to hit. Yeah, and Jack says Kentavious Street is also underrated, very solid. Terry Fontenot's done a very good job of finding 300-pound bodies for $1.5 million to $2 million to come in and do a job in his 4 years. Very, very good on that one. So on that note, y'all, we are going to get out of here. And I appreciate everybody showing up today. First Monday of June. We will be back on Wednesday. I want to say thank you to our friend Edward Brown for coming in with a super chat. And I want to say hello to so many new viewers that we have here. And we're getting a lot more over the summer as we go towards the football season. So if you aren't already liking, subscribing, and sharing, give it a shot. And any last words, Nick, before we get out of here?
No, it is the slow season, but we're still here hanging out. We still got an hour showing, Scott. I wasn't sure we'd get, 30, 45 minutes, but always fun. Good to hang out. Good to be back. And we'll have to, if I do end up moving to the East Coast, we're going to have to figure out some new times on stuff, because I'll be into the office at 9 or whatever. So that'll have to change things for us. A little bit anxious about that, but I'll let you know when I know.
Yep. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll see you in the comments. Keep it respectful, and we'll have good discussions. Again, we went back and forth on a lot of these. I love having those discussions. It's, the rudeness that's just going to get you banned. I don't have time for that. You're just out of here. But again, had a great time this morning. We'll see you Wednesday. Enjoy this gorgeous early summer weather before it gets too hot. And I guess it's still spring, late spring weather. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Peace.